My name is Edall-Robson, and I'm coming to you from Airdrie, Alberta, Canada, where it's overcast and smoky some days and beautiful blue skies the other, depending on which way the wind's blowing. I write cozy mysteries and all things that do with our Western heritage, our heritage. I shouldn't say Western heritage, but our heritage. Mine just happens to be Western heritage. And I have a few pieces that I would like to read to you this morning, if I could, please. The first one is called Livestock at Large. And if you have ever had the opportunity to be out traveling in the country and there's cattle on the road, this is their plight. Livestock at large. Understanding why bovines do what bovines do can make a trip on the country road that much more enjoyable. They think for themselves, do not like to be rushed, and will make you shake your head in wonder. Slow down, be patient, and they will have you on your way in no time. Next time you're traveling through the open range country, pay close attention to the small herd of cattle that you might encounter. Granted, you should be slowed down to a crawl anyway. As you progress forward, notice the first cow. It will be making a move. It will not be making a move other than to lift its head and bawl as you go by. The second, third, and maybe even the fourth will do the same. Creeping along, you are now nearing the end of the herd. Soon, you will be leaving the bovines behind. This is when you really need to be on full alert, because that is when this will undoubtedly happen. Just when you thought you were going to be on your way, one will step out onto the road in front of your vehicle. It will look past you and bawl loudly. Since you are at a full stop, check in the rearview mirror to see behind you. All of the other bovines who mooed as you went by them are now standing on the road looking in your direction. You are boxed in with no place to go. Pause here to enjoy the drama. This won't take long. They are just letting you know who's the boss in their country. It must be a rule somewhere that livestock you encounter in your travels are on a mission. They slow you down to help you enjoy the scenery and the life in the country. After a few minutes of inconvenience in your travel plans, they will wander off to the side of the road and let you continue on your journey. I'm going to read you a piece called The Valley, and this piece was a start of making notes for an idea as I lay in bed one night, getting up in the morning and writing it, writing a rough draft, I should say. And from it, I knew this was the story that I knew then, that I wanted to write more than short stories. I wanted to write more than the little vignettes and the bits of poetry that I write. And in fact, this story now has taken me on a journey of about 70, 80,000 words that are sitting on the shelf waiting to be revamped, redone. But this is where it started. She was 12, and in her mind, she was a grown-up, spending the summer at her grandparents' ranch without her mom and dad. They would join her before school started in the fall. Until then, she would spend all of the time riding with her grandfather. It was late in the summer when Granddad announced at the dinner table that tomorrow would be a good day to check the fence. On the way up to the valley, I kept my excitement to myself and went to gather up what I would need for the full day in the saddle. We caught the horses just after daybreak. Saddled and ready, they were given some grain to eat while we went to have our breakfast. While we ate, Grandma made us a lunch to take along. We were on our way just as the sun peeked over the top of the barn. The sun was not quite overhead when we came out of the trees to a small clearing. This is where Granddad said we would stop for lunch, as it was about halfway to our destination. He stopped, got off his horse, and squatted down on the ground to look at something. The grass had been trodden on, and it was easy to see that an animal had passed through here. "We'll turn back after we eat," Granddad said as he pointed to the big cat tracks in the soft dirt. "We can come another day." I was devastated, but tried very hard to mask the disappointment in my voice. "I'd really like to go today, Granddad." "The trucks will come tomorrow, and you'll be busy shipping cattle until after I leave." In the end, we compromised. We would go to the valley to see the wild mares and their foals, and we would head back to the ranch to be home in time for dinner. Granddad always took the trail to the rocks overlooking the valley. It was a safe vantage point to watch from without being seen. Today he circled below the outcrop and we rode toward the far end of the valley. Keep the wind at your face when you want to sneak up on something. Is what he had always told me. The direction we were heading fit perfectly for his way of thinking. Soon we would be on top of the rise where he could watch the horses below. It was then that we felt the ground shaking. Our horses started snorting and sidestepping. The sound on the wind was a rumbling mixed with frantic whinnies from animals in the valley. Trying to sound braver than I really felt, I quietly asked, "What's going on, Granddad? Why are the horses running?" He never said a word as he motioned to me with his hand to keep quiet and stay put. He turned his horse to the top of the rise and at the same time pulled his rifle out of the scabbard. I was scared because I knew that gun was only ever used for a few things, and shooting wild horses was not one of them. I busied myself by pretending to calm my horse, patting his neck, and all the while watching Granddad from under the brim of my hat. As I thought of all the things that could be going on, I wanted to yell out to him, "Wait for me!" But I knew better. This was serious. I watched as Granddad stepped off his horse with the rifle in his hand and dropped the reins. Slowly he made his way to the edge of the ridge. Every move he made was like a slow motion movie, never once doing anything that might call attention to his position. He leaned the rifle against a tree and from around his neck brought the field glasses up to his eyes. Somewhere inside my head, I screamed, "What do you see?" Not a sound dared come from my lips. When I saw him move towards the rifle, he calmly picked it up and brought it to his shoulder. Without hesitation, he aimed. Down towards the valley, the herd was there, and I knew it. My voice was locked inside my head, silently willing him not to shoot the horses. I heard a shot, and one more right after it. This time my voice was real when I yelled, "Granddad!" He lowered the rifle and turned toward me, once again motioning me to stay put. I sat motionless on my horse as I watched him put the rifle back where it belonged. He gathered up the reins and led the horse back down to the rise to where I waited. When he reached me, he spoke softly. We need to go down to the valley floor to make sure the mares and foals are okay. What we might find might not be nice. As we made our way down the slope into the valley, Granddad talked quietly, explaining what he had seen and why he had fired 2 shots. The big cat, a cougar, had been stalking the herd. That's what had spooked them. The whinnies we'd heard were the mares calling out to their babies to keep up. The cat had chosen a new foal as its prey. Its wobbly new legs couldn't keep up, so its mother had tried to keep herself between the foal and the cat. In hopes of being a warning, the first shot had been fired to scare the cougar off. When it had continued to circle the mare and foal, the second shot had ended the cat and mouse game. Granddad was pretty sure that the mare might be hurt, and he wanted to get as close as he could. I had never been to the valley floor before, and it seemed to take forever to get there. When we reached the bottom of the hill, we stopped. Let's let the herd get used to us being here before we try to get any closer to the mare. I could see her. She stood with her head down. Her flanks were heaving and her head and her body shaking, glistening in sweat. She turned her head to nuzzle the little foal that was pinned to her side. Granddad was right. The mare had been hurt. The big cat had opened up her hip with its claws. "What are we going to do, Granddad?" I whispered. I had been so mesmerized by the scene, I had not seen him untie his lariat from the saddle. "I'm going to try and rope her. I don't think she has much fight left in her, and I think with your help, we can get her and the foal back to the ranch where I can doctor her." He wanted me to help? Oh man, I thought, I'm just a kid. What do you want me to do?" I asked. My hands were shaking and my voice didn't sound very convincing. He smiled at me and told me what he expected. When I get the rope on her, it is very important you stay back. I don't want you to get tangled in the rope if she decides she wants to fight or run. I will tell you when I want you to do more and move in behind. Just keep yourself the length of the rope away. So, do you understand?" I nodded and turned my horse towards the edge of the meadow where I would wait for Granddad's next instructions. He rode forward a bit and stopped. The mare looked up, but didn't move. Granddad waited and then moved forward again. It wasn't until he was about 10 feet from her that she started to move away, but then stopped and turned her head to look at the horse and rider. Granddad threw his loop, watched it make its mark. He quickly dallied the rope around the saddle horn and waited for the mare to explode. Wild horses do not like a rope on them, which is why Granddad had told me to stay back. She pulled back hard on the rope, her eyes white with fear and her nostrils flaring and blowing. Granddad's horse moved him into position to keep the rope tight. This was how it was for more than a half an hour, a waiting game to see who would break first. The mare finally took a few steps forward. The rope loosened. She dropped her head as if to say, "I'm done. You win." Granddad called me to make my way around to the back of the mare. "Don't get between her and her baby. She needs to know it's safe beside her. I'm going to start up the hill. She is going to fight the rope and not want to go. Stay behind her and push her. You are my eyes back there. You have to tell me if something that could cause trouble for all of us. Understand?" My voice didn't sound like me when I said, "Yes, sir." So I nodded and he gave me a reassuring smile. The mare struggled against the rope all the way to the top of the slope. After we reached the top of the rise, she seemed to straighten out. And as long as she could see her foal, she moved along as best as she could. This was going to be a long ride home, and it would be dark by the time we got there. Grandma would be frantic with worry. What a story I was going to be able to tell. She leaned against the rocks, watching the mares and foals below. Her grandfather had brought her here to this special place when she was a child. Today she had come alone, just her and the sorrel horse that had been gifted to her by her granddad. She and the gangly colt had grown up together here on the ranch that was now home for both of them. The course of both of their lives had been changed on that day 10 years ago when the big cat had come to the valley.